As crazy as it sounds, college football returns this month. Everybody's talking about who won the Heisman this year, whether it's Carson Beck, Dylan Gabriel, whoever it may be. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 dark horses for the Heisman this upcoming season. So let's go ahead and get into it. First up on the list here is Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. He was amazing last year for Boise State. He had 220 rushing attempts for over 1,340 yards. He was explosive. He had 14 rushing touchdowns. He had over 6 yards per carry. He will absolutely wear out your defense running the ball down their throat, but he can also catch out of the backfield as well, having over 40 receptions, over 550 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. He averaged nearly 13 yards per reception this past season for Boise State. Many people in college football think that Ollie Gordon, the running back for Oklahoma State, is the best running back in the country. That might be true, but Jeanty is super close to him. Total yards last season, Gordon had 2,062 yards to go along with 22 total touchdowns. Ashton Jeanty had 1,916 yards and 19 touchdowns. There is not a big gap between these two players when it comes to the stats this past season. Honestly, I would take Jeanty over Gordon because he can catch out of the backfield, something Gordon is able to do, but he just cannot do it nearly as good as Jeanty. When you look at Boise State, they're the favorites to win the Mount West this season, and they take on Oregon on September 7th. They're not going to beat Oregon, but if Jeanty has a good showing and if Boise State can win out and win their conference, and if they're 12-1, their only loss is to Oregon, and they make the college football playoffs, I think more eyes are going to be on Jeanty, especially towards the end of the season. I think we could see him, being a Heisman candidate this season. So when it comes to Heisman contenders this season, I think you really should pay attention to Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. Next up on this list is West Virginia quarterback Garrett Greene. This past season, he was 147 for 277. His completion percentage was only 53%, but he threw for 2,400 passing yards to go along with 16 passing touchdowns and just 4 interceptions. That 53% is very low. If he can bump that up to maybe 58 or 60, I expect him to have a monster improvement compared to last year. Garrett Greene is one of the best mobile quarterbacks in the country. He had over 100 rushing attempts last season for over 770 yards to go along with 13 rushing touchdowns. West Virginia has the best rushing attack in the Power 4 this season, and a large part of that is due to Garrett Greene. The Mountaineers have a huge game the opening week when they take on Penn State, and if they're able to shock Penn State, I think eyes are quickly going to go on Garrett Greene and West Virginia. West Virginia had 9 wins last season, and some people are projecting them to not hit that mark. I think they're going to hit that mark, and honestly, I think they'll win the Big 12 this year. If they're able to win the Big 12, like I think they will, and if Garrett Greene can improve his passing just a little bit, and his rushing attack is going to be there, I think there's a realistic chance Garrett Greene could be a Heisman finalist this season. Next up on this list is Western Kentucky quarterback TJ Finley. Out of all the players in the list, I think he's by far the least likely to be a Heisman finalist this season, but I think Finley is going to surprise people with his production this year for the Hilltoppers. TJ Finley is a transfer from Texas State. Last season for the Bobcats, he threw for over 3,400 yards. He had 24 passing touchdowns to go along with 8 interceptions. West Kentucky's 2 biggest games this year are Alabama and Liberty. Obviously, they're not going to beat Alabama, but I think they really can beat Liberty this season. But West Kentucky is quickly becoming quarterback U when it comes to group of 5 teams. In my opinion, they already are. They've had some of the best quarterbacks the past decade in college football. Look at Brandon Dowdy, Mike White, Bailey Zappi, Austin Reed, and I think TJ Finley is going to join that list for West Kentucky. And, this is TJ Finley's first year with the Hilltoppers. The last 2 quarterbacks that started for West Kentucky in their first season, they have led the country in passing. During the 2022 season, Austin Reed threw for 40 touchdowns and 4,700 passing yards, leading the country in passing yards and was 3rd in passing touchdowns. During the 2021 season, they had Bailey Zappi. He lit up the college football world by storm, having 62 passing touchdowns and 5,900 passing yards. I mean, you cannot even get that in the video game. I'm not expecting Finley to put up quite those numbers, but I definitely think he could be maybe in comparison to the Austin Reed performance in 2022 with 4,700 passing yards. Some people might call this a bold take, but I really don't think it is. I think TJ Finley is going to lead college football in passing yards this season. But he's going to have a great year for the Hilltoppers. Might not be a Heisman finalist, but he's definitely going to put up some amazing numbers this year for Western Kentucky. There's 2 players left on this list here, and one of them is North Carolina State quarterback Grayson McCall. McCall is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football history. During 2020, 2021, and 2022, Grayson McCall was the Offensive Player of the Year in the Sun Belt when he played for Coastal Carolina. In those 3 years, I don't think you could find a single quarterback who's more efficient than Grayson McCall. He played 33 games, threw for over 8,000 passing yards, threw 72 touchdowns to go along with just 8 interceptions. He also ran for over 1,000 rushing yards and 17 rushing touchdowns to go along with that. I mean, he is so underrated. This past season for Coastal Carolina, his production did take a big hit. He was injured a large part of the season, playing in just 7 games, throwing for over 1,900 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. I think a large part of that was because he had a new offense coordinator and a new head coach with Jamie Chadwell leaving to go to Liberty. But Grayson McCall is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in college football history. He's one of the most underrated quarterbacks right now. I think, when you look at him, going to NC State, this is the NC State team who was pretty good last season. They were ranked a large part of the year last season. Their 2 biggest games are Tennessee and Clemson, and honestly, I think they can beat either team. NC State has a very, very easy path to the ACC championship game, and if North Carolina State is in the ACC championship game, whoever wins that game is going to be in the college football playoffs. Then all of a sudden, depending if Grayson McCall can put up those numbers he put up a couple years ago with Coastal Carolina, if he can have those numbers this season, I think there's a very good chance it's going to be a Heisman finalist. Honestly, I think North Carolina State is one of the most underrated teams this season, and a large part of that is because of Grayson McCall. Don't be surprised if we start hearing McCall's name more and more as the season continues, especially maybe towards, conference championship week. And if NC State's in that contention, we might see Grayson McCall as a Heisman finalist. I mentioned Grayson McCall was the Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year from 2020 to 2022, but the 2023 Sun Belt Player of the Year was Jordan McCloud. And that is the next player on his list here. Jordan McCloud is the quarterback at Texas State. Last season, he was with James Madison. We had an 11-2 record as he started with James Madison a year ago. His completion percentage was 68%. That's very, very good. He threw for over 3,600 passing yards to go along with 35 passing touchdowns and 10 interceptions. He had 275 rushing yards to go along with 8 rushing touchdowns as well. Jordan McCloud helped James Madison get national recognition and national hype, even having College Game Day last season. So I definitely think he's going to help this Texas State team get a lot of national recognition this season. When you look at Texas State, their 2 biggest games are UTSA and Arizona State. I think they win both these games. Honestly, I think Texas State will go undefeated this season. I think they're going to represent the group of 5 when it comes to the college football playoffs. And if Texas State is undefeated and goes to the college football playoffs, I think we're looking at a very, very good chance Jordan McCloud could be a Heisman finalist this season. Lots of people are talking about, Liberty and some of these other teams, Boise State. Maybe those teams do go to the college football playoffs, but I just think Texas State, they also have running back Ishmael Mahdi, who's one of the best running backs in the country. That 1-2 punch with Jordan McCloud and Ishmael Mahdi might be the best quarterback and running back duo in college football right now, and I think Texas State will surprise a lot of people this year. And if Jordan McCloud can have great production and win games with Texas State this season, like he did last year with James Madison, I definitely think we're going to hear a lot of McCloud this upcoming year for Texas State. So those are my 5 Heisman dark horse contenders this upcoming season for college football. I know there were several players I left off, like Salter from Liberty, but Liberty went undefeated last year, and he still wasn't a Heisman finalist, so I don't think he'll be one this year. There's a couple of the players like Ishmael Mahdi, the running back at Texas State, and Kyron Drones from Virginia Tech. But, the more we get closer to college football, the more people are hyping up Virginia Tech and Drones. So I decided to keep Drones off this list. But let me know what you think in the comments about this video. Comments of players you think might be a Heisman dark horse contender. But that about does it for this video. If you're new to my channel or we've seen my videos before, make sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching. And I will see you all next time on the Sports 2 Heinz Show.